And we're back on the build phase. I'm your host, Mr. Ben, and today I'm going to talk about what I assume is going to be the third and final preview for the Into the Darkness story arc. The story arc is Lightness and Dark. This is the third and final preview for Into the Darkness issue. Okay, so let's dive into these. It does say final preview right there in the article, so that makes sense. Also, we generally get 3, but anyway. So is there anything in this top bit here that is new information? 55 card set, we know that. Darkness and Light, spells. We saw some horrific characters last time, but don't give up hope. All right, so we got Blade. Now, we kind of knew Blade was coming because a while ago, I need to remember to do that part. A while ago, the box art for these was revealed, and generally it's main characters that go on the box, as well as there were those. I don't even know what it was, if it came from a solicitation or where, the Upper Deck website maybe, but there were some of these cards that were revealed through non-official spoiler means, and so we knew Blade was coming. Also, like, duh. This is a mystic and darkness themed expansion. It would be a gross oversight to not include Blade. It'd be like doing an X-Men expansion and not including Nightcrawler. Okay, Blade is a level 1 Defenders affiliated 3/3/6 with range. Any more 6 health, I almost feel like that's a starting point for a lot of main characters. 5 health is just not good enough in today's versus a lot of the time. Not always. Some 5 health characters have things that offset that tremendous drawback. But if you look at this as the number of turns you're allowed to play, I like to have a 6 there. Blade gets +2/+2 in melee combat. Okay, so he's a 5/5 if you're not using his range. That's, a level 1 5/5 is pretty good, really. It's not like the best stat block ever, but what other main characters start at level 1 with 5/5? Galactus, maybe? I'm sure there's some other ones, although they don't immediately come to mind. Vampire Hunter, level up 7. When Blade makes a melee attack, he gains 1 XP. If the defender is evil, he gains 2 XP instead. If the defender has a power with vampire in its name, he gains 3 XP. So in a best case scenario, you have to attack 3 times, which means he's not going to level till turn 3. In a not best case scenario, he might not level for the whole game. Like, if your opponent is playing either a loyal good deck or just a deck that happens to have a lot of loyal characters in it, or if for some reason you can't do melee attack, like if you're playing against Black Panther, even if you're making a melee attack, his bulletproof is going to prevent you from stunning him, in which case this guy just is never going to level. I don't like this. So it could be worse. It could be that he had to strike during a melee attack, which is significantly harder than just declaring the attack. So even if you declare the attack and then somebody think against, you still get your unfortunate 1 experience or up to 3. That level up does not seem awesome to me. Yes, he'd be a 5/5 in the melee attacks, which is a good stat block, and probably he can get, but it's just so slow, and it's, while your opponent does not have direct control over how much experience you get in the moment, like at an event, if you're going to a tournament where you don't know deck lists, you don't know what the room's going to look like, sure, we all have our meta predictions, but sometimes those are wrong. And if it's not obvious, like against Outriders, this guy would be dope. Yeah, like that would be awesome. And there are other characters against whom he's going to look really, really good. But then there's some characters where he just gets shut out and doesn't even get to play a game of Versus. You bring this guy against the Black Panther that runs roughshod over Life is Too Short, that has bulletproof, and he just doesn't get to do anything for the whole game. That's terrible. I don't know. I don't like this. I don't like how high this number is. Clearly what they wanted to do is kind of like what they did with Buffy. So they've played in this pool before, and I am generally a big fan of the Good Scoobies as a team and the Buffy expansion as an expansion. But it is so obvious how difficult it is to deal with that team. Like, for instance, I got the good Scoobies for the Super Awesome Games event that's going on right now, and I'm looking at the brackets, and I'm like, almost all more than half my main characters have something that only works if they're fighting an evil character. One of them I can switch so that he can get XP off good characters, but I mean, what turn does that happen? I don't know. And it can be real difficult to try to think of these matchups and just be like, okay, well, my level 2 payoff is blank. Like, there's multiple characters. There's one guy who can't level at all, and there's 2 characters on the Scoobies who just can't, they don't get a level 2 power if you're not playing against the right kind of team. And I think Blade is going to fall into that. And given how Illustrated Universe generally works, like, for example, look at the upcoming formats. Let's skip Deep Six for a moment, but look at Civil War. How are you even going to deal with this guy? This guy's completely unplayable in that format. Well, he's not pro or anti-registration, so he's not playable in that format anyway. But that's my point, is there are going to be formats, there are going to be metas where taking this guy is going to be a huge risk. You're going to get into these games where the only way you're going to be able to get XP is one at a time, in which case you're not leveling until turn 7. 5-5 on turn 7 doesn't look very good, and if your opponent's 3-drop has range, you're going to start stacking wounds. So that's rough. That's super rough. Now, of course, you play him with X Factor so he gets more than one attack per turn. Like, there are some things you can do to grease these skids, but just looking at this card in a vacuum, I mean, I'll play this hanging out with my friends. This kind of play experience is not the kind of thing I want to take to a tournament. I don't want to play a card that maybe I don't get a level until turn 7 because I got a bum matchup draw during Swiss. But what do you get? So he gains range. He becomes a 6/6, but functionally for most of your attacks, it's like he gains just +1/+1, which feels a little bit weak, especially given how difficult and potentially protracted his level up is going to be. I would have liked to see him get a little bit more buffed than that. It looks like he still retained... Okay, sorry. Without the reminder text on Martial Artist, I didn't see it initially. Okay, so he'll still be attacking for an 8/8, which that's better. That feels less bad, because he does have Martial Artist, but they didn't put the reminder text. Probably because they put every other word in the English language on this card. Raise the stakes. At the start of your turn, put a stake counter on Blade if he doesn't have one. Do you think we're going to get like little cardboard chits that have like stakes on them? Because that'd be cool. While Blade is in melee combat, anytime you could play any combat plot twist, any turn combat plot twist, you may remove a stake counter from him to wound an enemy character in the combat. Ooh. And it's not limited to... Wow, so you get to do that once a turn. It has to be melee combat. It's not limited to enemy characters. Now, it doesn't stun the character, so if they're multi-health, the combat continues. It just drops a wound on him. But there's a ton of use cases where that's going to operate kind of like a Think Again, where you're going to cancel the combat by dropping that wound onto a guy. Not all the time, but, it should be... and then Synthetic Blood Serum, main, pay a green, heal a wound from Blade. At the end of your turn, if Blade didn't use this superpower, wound him. I don't know how to think about this card. So the built-in med kit is extremely strong. There's a whole bunch of decks that run a smattering of Predator. Well, Predators in general, like at 2, 6, and 7, are extremely good characters. And they're not limited to those drops, but those are kind of the operational drops where you would throw those in because you can pay 2 for a Primeval, pay 2 for a med kit, and for 4 resource points and a green, heal a wound off your main character in a turn. Now, if people are willing to, in Dark Phoenix and Groot, in a bunch of decks, like slow, grindy, control-y decks that want healing, they throw that in. If people are willing to go to all of those lengths to get some healing into their deck, it stands to reason that Blade and his Synthetic Blood Serum is going to see some work. You're going to see people hoarding their greens and then dropping them. And in Defenders, this is a play pattern that we're kind of familiar with. Luke Cage has done that. Long ago, I talked on the podcast with Adam Logan about not only hoarding the greens, but hoarding them in hand so he could throw them out as a surprise to catch somebody off guard when they thought they were going to get a wound on his Luke Cage. Now, this isn't quite as versatile as this. It's just a main phase. You can't do it during combat, so you can't like bail yourself out of a bad situation. Now, the drawback, if you don't have the green, you have to take a wound. So it stands to reason he's going to get beat up a little bit down low. Yes, he has range, so he can like hit people back, but I think he's still going to take... I mean, this guy, there's 1-drops that can put wounds on this dude. So 1, 2, 3, I mean, I could see him coming into like a turn 4 or 5 level with 3 or 4 wounds on him. And then you kind of have to do this almost as desperation mode, almost like the Nick Fury Shield affiliated level 2 character who, after you use, what's it called, the Infinity Formula, I think, after you use it once, you have to pay for it every turn or you lose the game. It's this kind of situation. You're putting yourself on a clock, and at most it's an 8-turn clock. Now, you probably don't actually need 8 more turns after you level this guy in most games. I suspect this guy wants to be in an aggressive deck, so even being able to use this like once or twice, or even not using it and letting him take 1, maybe 2 wounds, probably that's unlikely. I suspect when you level, you're going to have like 1 free wound that you can take from not paying this. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. That's my guess. All of this seems pretty playable. I mean, let me rephrase. If we're talking about a kitchen table context and you're a fan of Blade as a character, I think this hits the mark. I think the flavor of this card is pretty good. I think at a tournament table, this level up is going to be problematic. It's a little too... Like, if I have a vampire in my hand, am I going to play that out? Or am I just going to play something else and let you stay small and beat you up down low? Like, the ability to neutralize what Blade's trying to do does not seem like it is that difficult to come up with a solid strategy to beat this guy, nor do I think it's going to be that difficult to implement that strategy. So at the tournament table, I don't know about this card. At my kitchen table, this guy seems like a lot of fun. I like how his abilities kind of rhyme with the Buffy set. There's some adjacency there with the way the other Vampire Slayers worked. And while I don't necessarily need all my Vampire Slayers to be on theme with all my other Vampire Slayers, it is a compliment to Super Awesome Games that they consistently are able to think about theme in this way. Now, there's probably an argument that could be made that if a little more attention was paid to game mechanics, we wouldn't have things like the out-of-time Darkhold loop, which I don't think was intentional. But, you know, we're playing the game that we're playing. And in Versus, if you're not into cards that are like beat you over the head with hilarious and quirky flavor stuff, then maybe this isn't the game for you. You know, like, this is the game that we're playing. So I think it's a valid criticism to say, hey, maybe sometimes it's okay to look over the flavor and see the mechanics on the other side and make sure those are tuned just as tightly as the flavor thing. And with Blade, man, that level up seems tough. It kind of reminds me of he starts off as Angel that came out in the Resistance arc, where if your opponent, I think they have to have a character with flight in order for him to get XP, or else he just doesn't level. This is not as bad as Angel, and I don't think the payoff is as good as the Archangel level 2, but it's, I don't know. At least until I get all the cards in my hand and I see how the meta would shape up. If this is not a meta that involves people reliably playing evil supporting characters or reliably playing vampires, then I don't think you can take this guy to a tournament and expect to have a good day in terms of tournament results. I think you could have a great day in terms of playing a fun deck with a character that you like if Blade is your jam. Oh, okay, another Blade. 7 cost, Night Stalker. So we saw another guy, I think last week, that had the Night Stalker keyword. I don't remember what that one did. Berserker, maybe. One of these other kind of older, not complicated keywords. But I don't... I guess I could look. We're sitting right here, right? look this up real fast. Now, this is the risk of trying to reveal these cards. Look at these cards live. Is every once in a while I have questions that I can't. Oh man, it's not even in this article. I'm the worst. So it must have been the first preview article. Man, Morbius's level 1 face doesn't look any better. Given a few days to mull it over, his face still looks like smashed granite. So what was the other Night Stalker? I don't think he's in here either, is he? Yeah, here he is. Okay, Lethal. So that's probably better than Berserk. He's a 3 cost. I wonder if all the Night Stalkers are going to be defenders. Or wait, wasn't that other guy? Anyway. So the problem with a lot of these synergistic effects is you gotta keep a board. And there's some situations in Versus where you just don't get to keep a board. If you're not running multi-health characters, if you're not built. Now, defenders of all the teams are pretty good at keeping a board. You know, Super Senses is the best defensive plot twist in the game. Things like Stick let you buff guys up. Jessica Jones sticks to the game. So sticks to the board. So if there needed to be a team that could make characters sticky, Defenders is certainly a team that can do that. Now, Jess obviously isn't a Night Stalker. What do all these different Night Stalkers do? What's the order of the powers? You can't get the Ferocious one until turn 7. Without knowing what all these are, it's kind of hard to pass judgment on them. But I will say, in general, any effect that stops being good when you can't hold a board is probably not an effect you want to build your whole tournament day around. Those decks are fine for playing kitchen table, and it certainly isn't playable in any kind of a limited environment. Like if you're doing draft or something, you can't count on it. So 7 cost, range, 6/6/2. I like the 2. 6/6 on a 7 cost seems bad, but Master Martial Artist, he's going to come down as a 10/10, and he gets +4/+4 while in combat with at least one evil enemy character, and that's his in combat, not while attacking. So he could potentially be a 14/14 if your opponent is playing the right kind of stuff. If your opponent isn't playing the right kind of stuff, he could be just a 6/6. Although the world in which you forego attacking with a 10/10 melee to make a 6 range attack seems weird to me. Like, that's a pretty narrow scenario. So I think this is playable as a 7-drop. 10 attack feels real good. If you have the option to... I hate having to do this every time. But if you're in a competitive environment, what does this guy do to immediately affect the board? I mean, probably he's going to get a kill one thing with his Ferocious and his 10 attack. Maybe he gets hit on the crackback. Maybe he survives and then somebody attacks him at range, so he gets all squishy and you can take him down. So maybe he kills a couple guys, but it doesn't... So Moreland comes down and kills a couple guys that turn. I mean, yes, Daze doesn't kill a dude, but often at the end of the game, where we're talking turn 7, turn 8, people are wounded up. A lot of times, all you need to do is get somebody out of the way for one turn and then push through for that last wound. This guy kind of does that. There's things to like about this card. Are you going to play this guy instead of Jungle Hunter? Like, are you going to play this guy and have a turn 8 instead of Jungle Hunter and go straight to turn 9? I hate having to say that about every single 7-drop. But if we're going to talk about the card in a competitive environment, you got to talk about the cards that he's up against. This guy is playable. I don't think this is a terrible card. If you have a read on the meta, there's going to be a lot of evil characters. A 14/14 7-drop with Ferocious is awesome. So I think this guy has some playability, but just general, like, pound for pound power level, I think there's other 7-drops that are better. Man Thing. This is a character. What? What is this team affiliation? Okay, so Monsters Unleashed is getting a Man Thing. 5 cost, flight, 4/7/2, enhanced durability. So this keyword has shown up a number of times. If he gets stunned by something other than being hit in combat. So -1 counters, can't wound this guy. It turns anything into a daze that isn't a combat strike. Now, my suspicion is something like the Predator plot twist. Is it any time? Whichever one it is that lets you pick a character and strike it. I don't think that would put a wound on this guy, because that's not an in-combat strike. It doesn't say struck by a character, it says struck in combat. So, okay, I have never found this keyword to be that impactful, to be that important. If my opponent has the ability to clear a character out of the way using -1 counters, they just don't use it on the character that has enhanced durability. They use it on somebody else that they can kill, and then they attack into the enhanced durability. Sure, there's going to be some corner cases where this keyword is going to be relevant. This is not a keyword that you... Like, you're not building a deck where you're like, ooh, this deck needs enhanced durability. This is, at best, gravy. What's the rest of this guy does? Guardian of the Nexus of All Realities. Reaction. Green. When an enemy player recruits a character that isn't a Marvel Illustrated Universe card, put it into its owner's hand. So I think this ability tells us that Danny and Ben have realized that the balancing mechanic between photographic and illustrated is a little problematic in a straight format where you're just playing, a limited illustrated deck versus a limited photographic deck. The generally bigger, more potent effects of the photographic universe get over people. And illustrated, while it has a much bigger war chest with lots more options in it, there needs to be some of those options need to be a little bit maybe more targeted, and this is one of them. This could also nuke problematic characters that are illustrated but aren't Marvel. So I'm looking at you, Jungle Hunter. Like, it'd be pretty although, man, is that even good? Because it doesn't say it stops the guy. Well, it says recruit, not when appears. So let's make sure before I start rambling about this incorrectly. So it's when the character is recruited. You do use up the recruit points for the character because Man-Thing doesn't give refunds. It does not specify here in the description whether or not appear powers trigger. But I feel pretty confident saying you do not get the appear power, because the turn order, and the reason I'm aware of this is because Dark Phoenix sucks. But you can't nullify Dark Phoenix because her power triggers on the recruit. The recruit happens. That's when uniqueness is checked for, costs are paid, etc. Then the character appears. And once it appears, that's when Nullifier could touch it. That's when you could throw a mutant... Well, no, Mutant Control Act triggers off the recruit as well. And again, I think this was specifically because Super Awesome Games doesn't want to just get rid of Dark Phoenix as a problem card. They gave us some ways to deal with her, which makes me think this triggers off of the same timing window due to the use of the word recruit here. So I play my Jungle Hunter, you pay a green, I don't get a search for anything, my 7 recruit points are gone, Jungle Hunter stuck back in my hand. That seems pretty good. Ghost. Dark Phoenix obviously is like... Oh no, that doesn't even hit Dark Phoenix because she's illustrated in Marvel. Oh... Why even have the, just give us this power. Just give us this power. It feels like this power was put in here for somebody who's playing in a mixed format and is like, man, my deck does pretty good, but I always get in trouble with those illustrated card or those photographic cards. So I need a way to just stop a photographic card or stop these. And ultimately what we end up with is a power that the absolute juiciest best target for it is a card that it can't target. This guy's kind of like Invisible Boy to me. I was saying Invisible Boy, I thought he was going to be a tremendous card, and a lot of people rightly pointed out that he's super situational and there's going to be narrow times where you want to use him, and that's true. Doesn't change the fact that in the games where he's good, he can win games all by himself. Man-Thing is kind of in that same bucket, but you don't get that blanket effect for a single superpower activation. Invisible Boy gets to turn off a superpower for the whole turn by paying 1. Man-Thing gets to, prevent this recruit, which could potentially give you a really big turn if your opponent just gets time walked and doesn't even get to have a turn 7, because this effect went off. But it's kind of in the same level of disruption where you're going to need the right meta. You're going to have to think about the types of decks you're going to be facing. And if the meta lines up, this guy could be great. This could be a great turn 5, cinch the game up, throw this guy in the back, put some people in front to protect him, and then when your opponent tries to bring down whatever their bomb card is, you just stop it. There are situations where this is going to be quite good, but because he can't target the kinds of cards that he is, any format where he's legal, there's going to be a lot of targets that are legal that he can't target, and that puts him in a weird spot. Certainly some playability there. I think it's going to be narrow and specific. Okay, a fully unaffiliated plot twist. Cool, we even had a generic plot twist. So we don't have another generic plot twist. It is generic, but it requires evil loyalty. Put this into your deck only if each card with a team affiliation and each character in your deck is evil. Choose an attacker on your side. It strikes an additional time this combat. Sure. Please give us more of this. Give us more cards that incentivize deck building around something other than the team symbol. Like, we've got team loyalty stuff. We got plenty of it. Let's see some of this stuff. Like, let's incentivize people to build their decks in different ways and reward that with cool stuff. Is this particular plot twist good enough to make you want to build your deck completely evil? I mean, if this was out during the Super Awesome Games event, you'd totally throw this in if you were stuck on a team that could only play evil cards. I don't remember if this expansion is going to be legal for the Deep 6 format, but that's another place where maybe it could see some play. I mean, any format or any deck where you're going to have all evil characters or close to all evil characters, maybe you kick a couple good guys out and make room for a couple evil guys, and then you can play this. This is certainly good. I mean, doubling your attack, that could be potentially a huge combat buff. Some of our biggest combat buffs in the game right now are stuff like Catfight. That's what, +5, right? Or is it +4? +4, whatever. This could be way bigger. I mean, with a character that can stack think about like Nimrod. Like, there's some characters that could get really big, and this gets them even bigger. This is a playable plot twist. Do you throw out all your good cards and only play with evil guys? No. This is a playable plot twist that's going to reward you for going in a specific direction. I do not think this is a build around card. I think you start off with, this is my deck. Oh, if I change these 2 drops, then I can have this payoff card. And I do kind of like the name too, a Necessary Evil. Totally playable. I like it. Is this going to be a good one? It is. All right. Man, that art to this art is a jarring difference. I don't dislike either piece of art, but they are such divergent in style that it is hard to, it's like milk and orange juice. Like, nah, not at the same time. Okay, in good hands, this can be played any turn. Put this in your deck only if each character with a team affiliation is good. Choose an enemy attacker. It can't strike this combat. So this is a generic Think Again. Is it better than Think Again? Like, in a way, it's better than Think Again. Because, so in a situation where, like, Cable exists, even though he doesn't strike, he can pay a red. And so there are situations where this isn't better than Think Again. But in a lot of situations, you're going to effectively cancel your opponent. It's like half a Think Again. Cancel your side of the combat, and I get to punch you anyway. That's really good. Do you throw away all your evil cards and only play with good cards over this? No. But I really, really like this design space of both of these cards. This is something that I wouldn't have necessarily called it out as a gap in the game, saying like, oh, we really need this kind of payoff card. We need this kind of support. We want to encourage people to build their decks in these kinds of ways. Not something that would have come to my mind as like something we really need, but now that I see it, I see the design space, I think it's great. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'd like to see a lot more of these. Like, if there are payoff cards for having your deck built with, I don't know, even numbers of good and evil characters. There's a middle of the road plot twist, things of this effect. The point is, rather than having every deck end up just being outside of combo decks, but for the most part, every deck is like, here's my archetype. I'm an aggro deck. What are all the staples that I fill in? I'm a mid-range deck. What are all the staples that I fill in? And many decks, particularly in the more open formats, end up looking very similar because you just throw all the good stuff in. They're just good stuff decks with slightly different focuses. This kind of stuff incentivizes people away from just playing good stuff decks and having the same cards in every single deck. And instead, maybe you take out those matches on two and you play, I don't know, Ahab, and you play Ahab instead. Then you get access to this plot twist. You know, maybe you take out the solos out of Rogue and put something else in just so you can get access to this plot twist. I mean, maybe not. I'm not saying that those are exactly great use cases, but now that's a thing that we can think about, and I think that's awesome. Just to remind everybody again, this expansion's due out on April 14th, so I'll anticipate seeing mine probably on the 17th. And man, you know, so the cards that have bite, or the cards that suck, I did actually ask Danny and Ben if they could confirm or deny that the original title of last week's reveal article was "These Cards Suck," and I received no comment in response. So the last article I got really excited about. There was a lot of cards that I felt strongly were going to be both good, fun, and like crazy stuff. This feels a little bit more like eating my vegetables, where like, so these plot twists, I'm not super excited about either one, but I like the design space. I like them. I like that they're coming into the game. And while they themselves are not these tremendous, flashy, archetype defining cards, they are like loyal soldiers, or they're a payoff card for building your deck in a certain way other than just maximizing win rate by cramming in as many staples as possible. And that's cool. I'd like to see more card design like this. I think Man-Thing, there's a format where this guy's going to be sick. Exactly what that format's going to look like, I don't know. But there are certainly going to be formats where this guy is going to just be great. Blade's a fine 7-drop. These main characters, they're okay. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm being a little hard on these cards because last previews were so good. They're okay. I'm excited for this expansion. I think Into the Darkness is going to end up being the best expansion out of the Darkness and Light arc, and it's probably not going to be close. I've enjoyed Masters of Evil and I've enjoyed Mystic Arts so far, but there's some really cool stuff coming in this Into the Darkness, and I like the way they kind of ramped up the complexity and coolness of the cards throughout the arc. It's made this spoiler season a pretty interesting journey, particularly with how compact it was due to the shipping delays. So I think with this release we are going to be back on track with where we would have been without the COVID-19 delays. So I anticipate we're going to just keep churning through these now at the like 1 release per month rate, as opposed to this kind of compressed timetable that we had here at the beginning of the year. So cool cards. We'll see you guys next time. Go win some